A wildfire, and we can only offer to our countrymen the best of the medical care that's around that enable us to deal with the challenges every now and then. Pati yung screen mo, may COVID siguro, humihingal. I see now, I don't see them, I see now. Can you fix it so that I'd be dealing with some of the guys in the panel? I would be requesting them to help give us the input. Pero sa bagay nandito sa akin, dito sa screen na malapit sa akin. So, I will just read the rundown of the day's events. Then, I would ask the task force yung sa ano kung ano ang it's the basic things. It's always medical care. Medical yan. So, ang importante, medicines. Aside from that, yung prevention of people na unvaccinated would go around, baka alam na nila, hindi nila alam mayroon na sila, and they would go around, and because they are not vaccinated, if they are also contaminated, they would spread the disease among his fellow men. Kaya some lawyers saying that we cannot restrain. Ako, I measures, I said the ministrant functions, I repeat, of government is to come up with measures to protect public interest, public health, public order, public safety, and blah, blah, blah. So, in the absence of a law, in Presidente is called upon to act. And because it is a national emergency, it is my position that we can restrain. And that I have ordered the barangay captains, because under the law, ang barangay captain can enforce all the laws of the land within his community. That's the long and short of being a person in authority. Lahat na batas, except those reserved for some sectors, agencies, and the president, lahat, they are mandated to enforce the laws of the land, all laws within their jurisdiction, except the exemptions that's reserved for some officials or agencies. That is my position, and I continue to, I'm now giving orders to the barangay captain to look for those persons who are not vaccinated and just would request them or order them, if you may, to stay put. And if he refuses, he goes out of the house and goes around in the community or maybe wherever pupunta, he can be restrained. And if he refuses, then the barangay captain, being a personal authority, is empowered now to arrest the recalcitrant persons. That is in addition to the police power, the agents of a person in authority. Yun, and a person in authority, the barangay captain, can also mobilize civilians and adopt them as give them the task officially, probably written, and that converts their status from being a civilian but also a person in authority called upon to assist the persons in authority. They now become agents of a person in authority. That is my position. Bahala ng, well, they can file cases. I'd be happy to answer. Sabi ko na, mayroon naman akong kaso sa ICC, di ipataw na ninyo para isang sagutan na lang pagdating ng panahon. But as I hate to see this word, pero these words, being the president, ultimately, I am responsible for the safety and well-being of every Filipino. And that is why my orders are to restrain them. Hindi naman kaagad arestuhin. Isa, pakiusap lang. Hindi ka nagpabakuna when you put everybody in jeopardy. You go out, you get contaminated. Dati mo ngayon, por pamilya, por bahay ang contamination. Let me just read the report of this is a collected or called from the report, different reports from government. I speak to you tonight with much concern over the rising cases of new COVID-19 in the Philippines, particularly in the National Capital Region. From around 5,400 new cases on January 4, please, I repeat, from around 5,400 new cases on January 4, it went to more than 17,200 by the January 6. More than tripled in just a period of 2 days. That is how the problem is galloping in our community, in our country, and in the world. So, meanwhile, another variant has also been reported in the so-called IHU variant, which was first detected in France last November. May dadating rin ito. Whether we like it or not, dadating to. And because we cannot, when a Filipino comes home, you cannot ban him from going back to his country. That's ridiculous. So we might come up in a more stricter, total nandiyan naman yung mga polis, nagbigay naman si Secretary Anyo, and that should give us the guarantee that there would be no more violations of that nature. Pero yung papauwi, total, mayroon mang, yung, mayroon mang, yung swabing pati, the mandatory, I think, of being in the quarantine house in the hotel. I commiserate with the problem of the hotel. I know that they really want to enforce the law also. But I said when it comes to squabble, their powers are very limited kasi ano lang civilian. The police would be in a more a potent deterrent from persons who do not want to honor the law. Meanwhile, another variant has also been reported in the so-called corona. Mahirap to. To provide us with more insight of these developments, may we now ask our expert resource persons to further enlighten us about the threat of Omicron as well as this other new IHU variant. Almost all of us here dito sa aming in this camp, walang marunong dito. We can only listen to you. We cannot even offer even the smallest thing about how to control or how to treat these coming variants in addition to what we are suffering now. I would like to call again, alam mo sir, we would like to spare you from spending so much time, but ikaw yung one of the persons or medical persons relied upon the government to give us the what should we do, how should we treat this. There are already implemented programs, but if there is something that we can offer in addition, we would be happy to hear from Dr. Edsel Salvania, member of the Technical Advisory Group for COVID-19 and Infectious Disease Expert. Dr. Salvania, you have the floor.
Good afternoon, Mr. President. Good afternoon to the cabinet members and to my fellow resource persons. May I have my slides up, please? Presenter. All right, Mr. President. So I'm just going to give a quick briefing about IHU and latest also on Omicron. Next slide, please. Next slide.
What's happened with the technical guys? Ayan.
So, yung IHU po kasi, this is not an official variant of concern or even an official variant of interest. Ang World Health Organization po, ang nagsasabi, ang nagde-designate ng variants of concern and variants of interest. IHU is the name of an institute in France po that described this particular lineage of the virus. And the WHO has already been monitoring this since November of last year. Ito po yung lineage na B.1.640. At so far, marami po siyang mutations, pero wala naman siyang pinapakitang parang survival advantage or immune evasion na nakikita natin sa Delta or sa Omicron. It's a variant that is being monitored, but it is not yet as concerning as Omicron or Delta or even the other ones po, like yung Alpha, Beta at Gamma. So ito po ang release ng WHO. Ang sinabi po nila, it is not a threat at this time. So it is something that we are monitoring. And even the people who wrote the paper from IHU, ang sabi nila, it is too early to speculate on the virological, epidemiologic, or clinical features of this IHU variant. So the bottom line po, Mr. President, is we will continue to monitor this po. But right now, I think our attention really has to be on Delta and Omicron because this is really wreaking havoc all over the world. Next slide, please. I think that's the platform. In summary po for IHU is not a variant of concern. It is not exhibiting increased infectivity or immune evasion at this time. So gumagana po yung bakuna natin for this. WHO is monitoring it, pero hindi pa po siya BOI or DOC. It's designated as a BUM po. Actually, nanay niya yung designated na BUM, yung 1.640. Ang the thing to remember po is that yung mutations po natin, kahit madami pa yung mutations, they do not necessarily translate into immune evasion or more transmissibility. Kung naalala niyo po, Mr. President, yung P3 natin or Theta na describe po na dito sa Pilipinas, dati po, naging DOI yun, it was called Theta, tapos naging BUM, variant under monitoring, tapos natanggal na lang siya. Nakakatakot siya kung titingnan natin yung mutations niya, but it did not pan out. Actually, tinanggal na siya sa monitoring. So hopefully, ganito rin po yung mangyayari sa IHU. But of course, we have to continue to be vigilant kasi marami po talaga itong na-generate na variants, especially among people who are not vaccinated. Yung mga hindi po bakunado, mas madaling mag-mutate po yung virus sa kanila. So in a way, if we vaccinate a lot of people, we are also preventing the emergence of these variants. So ang conclusion po ng WHO is that IHU is not a threat at this time. Next slide po. So just to update you, Mr. President, on Omicron, and we are getting more and more data about this, it really is more transmissible than Delta, particularly because yung vaccines na hahawa pa rin kahit fully vaccinated. Although our vaccines continue to work naman to decrease the risk of severe disease. It is less deadly compared to Delta. Nakita na po yan in comparing 500,000 people with Omicron and 500,000 people with Delta in the UK. You are 3 times less likely to get hospitalized with Omicron compared to Delta. And of course, that goes down even more kung bakunado po kayo. And the vaccines significantly still protect against severe disease. Giving boosters will add more protection. And vaccines also decrease infectiousness and risk of mutation. So if you're vaccinated, may chance na mahawa ka, pero most likely, magiging mild po yon. And even yung paghawa mo sa ibang tao, yung risk goes down kasi mas mababa po yung amount of virus that you release into the air. Next slide, please. So ito po yung naging curve po sa South Africa, yung sa Gauteng province nila. Nakita po natin, mataas yung number of cases, yun po yung sa December, mataas, pero yung admissions are not so high. And very, very reassuringly, the deaths are not following the rise in cases. Of course, pwede pang magdagdag yan, pero we don't expect it to be as bad as Delta. Kasi kung titingnan nyo po yung graph before that, yung pagtaas po, kasama po yung hospitalizations at yung deaths, halos sumasabay sila. But for Omicron, kasama na rin the fact that there are some vaccinated people in Gauteng, hindi po talaga sumasabay yung death. So even if we're seeing many, many cases, basta mataas ang vaccination rate natin, we hope that the number of people who will end up in the hospital will remain relatively smaller and the number of people who will die will remain low. The problem is, yun nga, pati yung healthcare workers natin nagkakasakit eh. So, kailangan po talaga natin rin silang protektahan. Next slide, please. So, ito rin po yung pinakita sa ages, yung Omicron wave across the board po, whatever age, mas mababa po talaga yung risk that someone will end up in intensive care compared to Delta. So, it is not zero. So, meron pa rin talagang magkakasakit, magkakaroon ng severe, but it is about half that of Delta. So in a way, that helps us because then yung healthcare capacity natin will hopefully, as long as maraming bakunado and we can keep infection rates under control, we may be able to cope. May laban po tayo as long as mataas ang vaccination rates. Next slide, please. So even in South Africa, sobrang taas po ng cases nila, but then it started to go down in